Hi, I'm Mats Bäckström of Team Capsicum Infinity. I hope you enjoyed the disassembly video. Now we're going to put the firearm back together again, hopefully without destroying any parts. For the vital parts, the trigger mechanisms and stuff that I don't see very often, I use the Brownell Action Lube. It's the same as the factory does. I only take the grip off and completely disassemble the gun about once or twice a year. And those parts that I don't get to, I use the Action Lube for, and especially the trigger mechanism. I use a toothpick to distribute the lube, and why? Well, I don't know. I feel that I get an even distribution of the lubrication using a toothpick. You will see later on that I'm using a brush to distribute the slide glide, but for the Action Lube I'm using a toothpick. It's quite sticky stuff. Here's the trigger mechanism. It goes in. Remember to put that in before you slide the grip back on the frame. Check that it's working and looks nice. Then the frame goes on the grip. You should not use any force putting the metal grip back on the frame, and preferably it's best to remember the thumb shield before you push it all the way up. I didn't, so I had to pull it a little bit back down. There's the thumb shield. Gripping it and holding the thumb shield in place is a bit tricky, so I'm actually using something to hit a little bit with. This is a brand new gun, so everything is extremely tight, so I tap gently to get the grip in place. No force, but I just tap it to get everything in place. The front grip pushing screws goes in. I've already Loctited one screw into one place. Other screw. I use blue Loctite for these screws. You could probably use red as well, but I don't have any red, so I'm using blue. For the new screws, you need a 6-point spline key, or if you have the older screws, it's two 1/16-inch hex keys. Then we're going to put the grip bushings in place. Here it's important that you line up the grip bushing on the inside so the grip bushing doesn't catch the edge of the frame inside, because when you start pulling, torquing the screw, you might actually crack the corner of the grip bushing. For this you need a 1/8-inch H key or Allen key, depends what you want to call it. I tighten it as hard as I can. Some parts of this video is done in double speed because, well, you get the idea. Here we go, another one. I do Loctite the grip screws as well. Everything that is screwed into the gun I use Loctite for. Because for USPSA and IPSC you need everything Loctited in place. The mainspring housing goes back together. Plunger, the spring, and I think that's called the plunger as well. And it's quite tricky to do on your own if you don't have the right tools, so I've actually drilled a punch into the edge of my table to help me do this much easier. Then just push it back into place, put the pin in, and then quick check that everything's in place by I use toothpicks a lot. Toothpick to just where it is, fine. Then we're going to lube up the hammer and disconnector area. Here I'm lubing up the sear. I'm using the Brownell stuff. You will see in the superimposed image there that that's the relationship of the sear disconnector and the pin. If it's the first time you ever take a gun apart, it can be a little bit confusing how those parts go back in together. Then everything is lubed up, I just slide it into place. Use my toothpick again to guide it into its correct positioning. And then I'll put the toothpick in the hole, wiggle it, and then make sure that everything is in place. And the pin will go in without any hesitation at all. I will of course lube it up. Usually by now my fingers are so lubed, so just touching it will be lubed enough. I'll go a little bit more. Everything's in place, pin goes in, and we're going to lube up the hammer. Everything that is metal and touching metal and moving metal, I will lube either with the Brownell stuff, which also the factory uses, or Slide Glide. A little bit on the pin. Goes in place. There we go. Check that the hole is aligned. Pin goes in place. Check a bit that the function is doing alright. A little bit more lube on where the safety is going to be. Safety is not going to go on now, but I always check, since it's a bit tricky to get the left side blade in place by when everything is where it's supposed to be, I always check that it can go in, because sometimes, because not all ports are in, the parts that are in are not always in the right exact position. I've had sometimes that pushing the safety in, it actually catches a little bit on the sear. I will use the toothpick to make sure that the sear is out of the way. It's you know, it's not very much, but a millimeter or half a millimeter or something. And then when I know that the blade goes in, I need to touch the sear a little bit again. I don't know if this is 100% officially correct, but now see my safety clicked in. Then I'll go to lube all other parts. This is the sear spring. It gets a bit of a lube as well. You'll see in the superimposed image that a lot of questions I get is that how is that supposed to be in? Hopefully that image enough, hopefully clear enough, hopefully if you're watching a big enough screen. That's how the sear spring goes. The middle blade goes on the disconnector, and the left blade touches the corner on the sear. But not too high up on the sear, because then the gun doesn't work. The triggering mechanism doesn't work correctly.
That one goes on the corner there. That one there.
Well, no,
that's the right position.
Myself. There we go, everything is in place. I'll put the mainspring housing in to keep the three-bladed sear spring in place. There we go. Hold the hammer strut down. I usually now hold the gun to the table and manually cock the gun. You should hear two clicks. One for the half cock notch and one then for the full cock. If you don't have two clicks, something is in the wrong place and you need to redo it. I've already done that, so now the beaver tail goes in. The right side blade goes in. That has to go in first before. Don't screw it up now. There we go. There's in place. I've already put the safety plunger there. Make sure that they're lined up, not fully extended. Then I'm using a punch or something that's small enough to get in between the frame and the blade, and then push the plunger away. And a little bit of a wiggle, and it's in place. But it's not fully in place. I usually hit it. You can use a wise. The factory actually wises the blades together. Check again that everything is working before putting the magwell on. Magwell can need a bit of persuasion to get over the skater tape, And make sure that you don't hit it so the skater tape crumbles up. So a little bit of persuasion to get back on there. And I also always hit it on the front side like that to make sure the holes are lined up. Now the holes should be lined up. I firmly grip the gun against the table. Thing goes in and check that it's lined up. If it's not, hit it again. There we go. Grip and frame is done. Usually, normal maintenance, I never take this apart. This is as far as I go. That's good enough for normal running, cleaning. You don't have to take more parts.
This way, so hold it like this.
Oh, I'm talking to myself again.
And you can see, you turn it right there.
It's the easiest way. You hold it, and then you turn it. You push it a little bit until you find the notch. There, it turns without any force at all. The button goes on. I will Loctite this one as well, because since I don't very often take it off, everything that has threads will be Loctited on my gun. That keeps it from moving during competition or practice or anything. There we go, it's in place. Check that it's moving okay, looks okay. Perfect. And we're gonna use slide glide from now on to lube up all the normal parts of the slide and frame. We're gonna double time a little bit because it takes a bit of a long time. I use a small brush, an even thin layer on everything that's moving. Everything. One thing to check here if you're using a buffer is to cut the corner of the buffer a little bit so the buffer doesn't ride on the barrel of the gun. It's actually the metal that rides. There we go. Need to get the grease off your hands, otherwise this will be tricky. There's other ways of doing this, but this is what I do. Keep your eyes out of harm's way or use glasses. There we go. Mechanism assembly is done. Putting the extractor in. Tap it in. Then I usually take something to make sure it's lined up in the notch so the firing pin stop can slide in easily. I guess I have to check it a bit again. And then I test, make sure that the firing pin stop goes in and out. I'll take it out. And it's time to lube it up. Bit of slide glide, but nothing, I don't usually put slide glide on the hole itself, it's just on the edges where it goes, metal touches metal. The firing pin itself, I never lube with anything. Absolutely nothing. The same with the extractor. Especially the hook on the extractor, never sees any lube. Then I push the firing pin stop halfway in, then it's easy to get the firing pin in, push it down with a punch, and you push the firing pin stop in place. Click, done. And it's back to the slide glide again. Everything, every surface I give a small layer of slide glide. Taking special care to the rails. I use slide glide light. Because I live in a Nordic climate where it can be quite cold, and even when it's a hot summer day, the slide glide light works fine. You can play around with the heavy or medium and see if you like. Same thing goes for the barrel. The barrel gets a thin layer on everywhere it touches any other part that's metal. Using a brush I find is quite easy. Slide goes in, then the recoil assembly goes in. A little bit more slide light on the reverse plug. That's how I do it. A bit more slide light. Make sure that the hole is lined up. Oh, I forgot to lube the frame. The frame gets everything that is touching anything else that is metal gets a thin layer of slide light. Since I'm using a thumb shield, it's quite difficult to get to the rails beneath the thumb shield, so I'll use a pipe rinser to get in behind there and lube up the rails. That's probably not really necessary because everything is greased up and it will distribute itself once you start racking the gun, but I'm being meticulous. Oh, I guess we need some more slide light.
There.
See, that's where I've eased off the... Line up the hole, make sure that the barrel lick is pointing straight down. Line up the holes. Push the slide stop in. Mine is pinned quite heavily, so it can be a little bit of touch. Make sure you don't scratch your gun with the slide slope when you do this. There we go, it's in. Check that the gun is functioning. Dry off the excess grease. It should be working fine. I rack it a couple of times, try the trigger, rack it a couple of times. That will push out all the excess slide light to the rear and dry it off. And you're done. Hope you enjoyed it. Now you know how to take the gun apart and put it back together again without damaging any parts of the gun. Hope it's been fun. Enjoy shooting the best gun in the world.